Okay, so welcome again for joining with us with the Raja Yoga workshop. And tonight's theme is remembering the true self. And so we always like to start these workshops with a bit of reflection, and just like as if you were actually in the center. How we start is really to bring things back to a reflective space that really helps in terms of any kind of workshop for this to be meaningful to you. So we're just going to share the screen. And this is a point that one can focus on. Some really find it very helpful, can use that. And it's not for it to be anything I need to focus so hard on. It's supposed to allow me to have a feeling inside. And you're welcome, if you don't wish to use the point of focus. But we do invite you, if you're open, to keep your eyes open. Because when it comes to day-to-day life, it is ideal to be in reflection now and again through the day, at any moment. Standing in line in the grocery store, perhaps waiting at a coffee shop for somebody, waiting in the car, in the middle of traffic. It helps to introduce perhaps reflection that you already are doing in your day-to-day life. The point of light that's shown in the image represents a desire in the heart that every being has to feel more clear in their life, to have a sense of purpose, focused, to feel more simplicity. In their inner world. When the mind is noisy and emotions are rising, it is very difficult to make decisions. It is very challenging to feel calm, to feel anything but heavy feelings and anxiety. And yet everyone in this world is looking for peace and happiness, regardless of the means to find these two feelings in their life. Everyone is looking for that. So just reflecting for myself. What would life be for me if there was true peace in my heart? Peace with myself. Peace with my past. And peace with everything else around me. What if I had that feeling inside? That feeling where I don't experience being influenced by things around me. Not influenced by uncertainty and change. That I feel free. This is what true peace is. To feel free. Not affected, but free to feel other feelings inside that I wish to feel. So taking a few moments right now just to reflect with myself. What would that mean for me? To have that practically in my life. So peace with myself, the past, and things around me. Not to be affected. To feel free. To feel I can access the feelings that I really want in my life. You're welcome to note down, if you have a notebook, at any time in this workshop, any insights that come up. Just that feeling, what happens if that was my life, to feel that peace, at peace with everything. So giving everyone just a few more minutes. Why do we encourage you to note things down? What a workshop is about is always reflecting things back for yourself. Using what one experiences and learns to use it in their day-to-day life, their realizations, their insights. So giving everyone one more minute. Welcome, Yasmin. I know you just joined with us. So, just in a reflection, inviting souls to reflect on that experience of practically speaking. Everything about what we want to share and experiment and explore in the workshop is always about what does this practically feel like or look like in your own personal life. And so, if anyone has any thoughts to share about the reflection, again, what would that mean for me? Putting yourself in those shoes of feeling, what if my life on a day-to-day level, I had that feeling of this real, true peace, completely unaffected, able especially then to access whatever feelings and thoughts that I want, when I want, and however long I want. And perhaps if you're comfortable to share, you're welcome to type in the chat box. But I can at least share for myself. So Sheila said, I feel I'd be more connected to my creativity. And absolutely true. I don't know how many artists I know, musicians I know who feel quite stifled and restricted, not be able to access this capacity inside. And a big part of it, actually, and many of you already know this, it's because of ego, right? And ego can look like many different things. One of the biggest things, what it looks like, is doubt, uncertainty, unworthiness, those feelings, not good enough, not able to then, therefore, let go of fears and opinions and outcomes. So, most definitely. And that's the hugest thing about not to be affected by things, especially on such a subtle level, and we can tell because we start to have a lot of waste thoughts. Any other thoughts to share? Pauline shares pure feelings of love, acceptance, stability, and understanding. Beautiful. And this is the aspect in which is what we are going to really explore today, is about this aspect of who am I? We really did start to just bridge the question first and foremost of everyone is actually looking for peace and happiness. No matter what it looks like, everyone is. Some might feel very far from it, but ultimately, sometimes I like to think about and remember everyone used to be little babies, and you really get to see their true nature. I know some will say that there are some babies that they cry all the time, but there's a reason why they're crying. There's some sort of sorrow that they're feeling, but it's deeper. As we had mentioned, for those who've already taken Raja Yoga, some sort, one of the elements of Raja Yoga, which I know most of you in this workshop have, but what this aspect of Raja Yoga is about, and we're taking just little parts of what Raja Yoga is about. The cornerstone is that there is a core of who I am, and that core of who I am is eternal. And it is what we often call spiritual. So when we say spiritual, we don't mean religious, but when we say spiritual, we're talking about something invisible. We're talking about values. We're talking about awareness. We're talking about thoughts. That's the core of who we are. And even scientists are very aware that there's something called consciousness. And there's an increasing interest of scientists of trying to describe what that is. But this is a study where I am actually practicing to remember that I am actually purely a spiritual being. And inside this physical body, I have forgotten who I am. But it's not just that I've forgotten who I am. I have then developed an acquired personality that does not reflect the real me. But my true personality is actually stable, is light, is loving, is caring, is good. But we've lost access to that experience. So when we came up with this title of this workshop, Remembering the True Self, the word remembering was chosen very deliberately because it's very different from imagining and thinking. And in this study of Raja Yoga, it is about remembering who I really am, which means there is a memory inside, no matter how far and so inaccessible that memory is, there is a deep memory inside of this true sense of who I really am. And this study of Raja Yoga is about waking up that memory. We often have participants who take the course and they are trying to determine, what does that really mean? Is there a difference between thinking about myself as being a spirit versus remembering that I'm a spirit? And that's why it's tricky when it comes to that meditation image you saw right earlier during the reflection. It wasn't meant to be just something for me just to imagine myself. We often share that in this course, I am a point of consciousness, but it doesn't mean that I'm like this star. And in the study, you are learning that you can't see yourself, but you do exist. You are consciousness. You are the one who's thinking right now. You're the one who's aware. You're the one who feels. But we're so used to being shaped that this is me, but I am here. I am always aware. But my awareness right now is very, very physical, very gross. And I'm always the one who's the one thinking, but it's as if I don't even have control over my own thinking anymore. And this very study is about actually awakening that memory. And that the peacelessness that everyone is feeling is a sign that we're missing something and we don't know what we're missing. And that more and more we feel that things that used to fulfill us are not fulfilling us anymore. So when it comes to this study, and when we have these workshops like this, they're really basically for those who are actually pulled at the right time in their own personal life. And for everyone, what that timing looks like is going to be different. And it's basically this inner program within the self, which has so much to do with when my own inner tank of capacity has run dry, and basically everything physical and temporary, which I am not, I am eternal, I am immortal, that the physical and the temporary just cannot fill me enough anymore. Because my own power and capacity as a spirit has run so low that nothing temporary can really keep me going. And so that's when an individual starts to seek in their life, and they start to have those existential questions, and they start to have those big questions of who am I? And so I'm going to share a screen for you. And some of you have already seen this picture, perhaps maybe in psychology, perhaps one of the courses here. but a classic picture of an iceberg. And the reason why we use this picture is because our understanding of ourself, as I use this pointer here, is really actually very much in the superficial in many ways. And so before we go any further, what do you feel? And you're welcome to type again in the chat box. What do you feel are common ways in which we identify ourselves? So what are some common ways we define our identity? And a big hint is when you meet anybody, when you go to a social gathering, when you introduce yourself to your coworkers, what are ways and how we commonly identify ourselves? So Sheila has mentioned occupation. I'm sure there's a whole list of stuff that can come in your mind. If you just put yourself in those shoes, you've already been in that experience many, many, many times. Mother, absolutely. Which is interesting because you probably notice for yourself if you are a physical mother or know of somebody else. There was a time when they were not. And so that was not their world. So that means all the things that they're thinking about currently as a mother, not anymore. Status, gender, nationality, huge ones, huge ones. And now we know gender is a really big one out there. And status is quite interesting because there's status within a household, there's status within a workplace, there's even status even with a group of friends, right? All over the place. So status it can get quite subtle, and we know status in terms of even economic status as well. So it was interesting because I was at a gathering yesterday out in the public and bumped into a mutual friend, and I can just see, the same question of how are you doing, and the same classic conversations about work, and as you know, about COVID. And I'm just watching this as an observer, a witness of seeing this conversation and seeing how easy it is and comfortable it is to hide under and beneath these different very predictable conversations, which aren't necessarily very meaningful to us. And so it's always a question for you to think about in terms of how do we define ourselves? Because it's back to this picture again about the iceberg. And there are some who feel they may be at the cusp of wanting to be able to go deeper and feeling like, I don't think these things about occupation and household as a mother or a father, status, gender, nationality, age, any of these things actually define me. And I actually know of someone who never wanted to be a mother. And so when her children would always give her a Mother's Day gift that had something to do with the household, the kitchen, utensils, something that had to do with defining her as a mother, it would just tremendously upset her. But the soul, this individual, who's playing this part, in the physical way, playing this part as a physical mother, couldn't really articulate what is it that's really bothering her. But it was just this concept of being a mother. And I've seen teachers too. I remember when I was very young, like 5 years old, 4 years old. And, I remember you would just go to the teacher if you're in distress, teacher. And the teacher would be like, stop calling me teacher. I have a name. And then, I'm like 5. I don't understand anything. But years later, I understood exactly what she's talking about. Not being able to be recognized for anything more than just the role. So this is this aspect again of all the stuff that's on the surface. And yet you can feel within your own life and even others too, that work becomes dissatisfying. The household can be dissatisfying. You can get a lot of things done, projects, and then what? Then what? Then what? And yet what everyone is looking for are actually quite invisible things. As mentioned in the commentary, looking for that experience of peace, which is completely invisible. Looking for that experience of love. Looking for a feeling of acceptance and belonging, understanding. And we've come to a point now where we're so physical in our awareness and our consciousness and our ideas that we have now attached very physical things to what peace is, very physical things to what love is. And so, interestingly, as everyone knows about the Nobel Peace Prize, and there are things that individuals are being awarded for peace, but is it really about peace? It's about provoking thought again. That there's like photography, for example, and getting awarded for that. We're now talking about the experience of peace. So yes, individuals are starting to connect the dots that if I had these things, I would experience peace. In the study of Raja Yoga, you are learning that peace is actually your personality. It's actually your true nature. That means that you would feel it regardless of whether or not someone liked you, regardless of whether you made a mistake, regardless of anything actually happened around you. And it feels like, how on earth is that even possible? And I remember when I first took this study and hearing that peace is a personality, to be honest with you, I didn't even really get it, what that really meant, to even think about that. And sometimes we use the example of a rose. The fragrance of a rose is 24/7. It's not like it's going to turn on its fragrance at certain times or in certain circumstances. So that this aspect of really starting to even be open to considering that I am a soul. I'm a soul right now who's completely forgotten who I am, the experience of myself. And yet we're looking for it, completely searching for it. And sometimes we can't tell we're looking for it. It might seem like it's about a certain job or someone's approval, some sort of, securing a house, for example, moving to another city. It might seem like it's those things. But one of the things that we can even experiment right now is to ask yourself, why do you want that? Because I want to be secure. Why do you want to feel secure? And then keep asking yourself that question, why do you want this? And it's like digging deeper, deeper, deeper. What is it exactly you're actually looking for? Because underneath all the layers, actually, if you can make those connections for yourself, which no one else can do for you, then it really helps to illuminate so much understanding of what you're truly seeking for. Ego won't let you do that kind of reflection. Ego is going to tell you, I know all this, or ego is going to tell you, I don't have time. Ego is going to tell you, I have better things to do or more important things to do. And yet we never, ever really get to what truly is going to make us satisfied. And then I know so many who often say, and I can see it myself at times, where it's like, oh, only if I had a day off, only if I had some time. And when there's a day off and you have time, like, what do I do with myself? I'm not sure what I'm supposed to do. It's like we're being pulled in one direction with another. I want to be busy and occupied. Oh, now I'm just too busy and occupied. Now I have some free time. What am I supposed to do? And I've heard many share about that too when it comes to retirement, or has happened, especially with this pandemic as well. They don't know what to do. with themselves, but yet that's actually not what the issue is. It's deeper, just like this iceberg. It's something deeper. So when it comes to a perception, belief, and understanding about ourselves, there's two areas in terms of our superficial understanding and deep. And the areas that we talk about is that we often see ourselves in very negative ways, and we think that's who we are on the very superficial. But we can't access the truth of who we are. We can't remember that experience. And the other aspect is we try then to maybe have a very superficial understanding or a sense of value of myself, which comes in these ways such as occupation, roles in the household, these very temporary things as a sense of value. And yet there's all this other stuff underneath that actually I can't face or hide. So there's two aspects to that. And in the study of what Raja Yoga is not about battling, and it's not about trying to face ugly things or go deeper into buried things in your subconscious. What it's really about is actually awakening this truth of who you are. And what it really focuses on is actually recognition, which is a very powerful, invisible capacity, but is a capacity that everybody already has. We already have all these capacities. We're just using them in very day-to-day, mundane, physical things. And because we use these capacities, like remembering, deciding, discerning what is good for me or not, we use these things in such day-to-day, mundane things. In a way, we've dulled those capacities to only just be used for day-to-day things. And so this study is actually using these capacities you already have, but using them right now in terms of awakening who you really are. And one of the biggest things, as I mentioned about, is timing. What really resonates with going deeper into something like this is only something that can happen in your own personal life when you feel that you're ready. And it's not like it's like, okay, I'm ready now. It's just more that there comes a time when you're seeking. You're looking, other things that normally would, make you feel that you're satisfied in the day, just don't do so anymore. And so then this internal capacity becomes a bit more powerful. You just start to feel more clear. I'm looking for something. And what I have so far in my life is not fitting that bill. And so this study is really about this recognition of that which is true and real of who you truly are, which is under the iceberg, and learning to be able to see all the stuff on the surface without trying to shut it down or suppress it, but see all of that with understanding. And today I had such a powerful realization how much that capacity to see all this stuff going on the surface. And we all know what that is. The stuff that's on the surface is our emotions, as well as racing thoughts, wasteful thoughts, negative thoughts. All that stuff can still happen while you're still going in the journey of experiencing and realizing and recognizing the true sense of who you are, which hasn't been accessed for a long time, hasn't been felt for a long time, and may seem to have been forgotten and is dormant. And so there are so many capacities that you're reawakening in this study. And this is why the workshop is called Remembering the True Self, because this is really about waking up that which is true within you, already there, a memory, an ancient memory, of who you are. And it's not at all very far from positive affirmations, which is really more about a hope of convincing yourself. And so this is what this study is really about. And the workshops are really starting to at least provoke some thought, just thought-provoking questions to start to awaken this recognition of who you are. So I'm just going to pause for a moment if individuals have any questions at all or thoughts to share before we have another reflection. So we have two lovely questions here. So we will, one comment. So we'll just address your comment first. Pauline, the more we seek from the outside, the more we feel empty. 1000%. And this is why one of the things about Raja Yoga is that you learn context. You learn context about what's going on inside you, and you learn about your identity and what's really going to feed you. And what really feeds us is the experience of peace, love, bliss, truth, power, and purity, actually, and balance. And when we experience these things, which again are invisible, and when we start to realize none of those things we can actually experience outside, and this is where we have this connection with our relationship with our spiritual parent. And this would then be a being that in many religions, whom they call God, for some there are many different other names, Ishwar, Prabhu, the divine, we often call him Supreme Soul. But this connection to the soul, relationship with soul that we all used to have, that fulfills all of this, and for what reason, is actually in service for me to get back to myself. While I'm still feeling drained and empty, I'm actually experiencing and realizing who I am, but at the same time, needing to fill up. And because filling up through all of the temporary things, and that's even including like relationships that come and go. And as Pauline has mentioned, you just notice you could be with a group of individuals. I know a mother who says she loves spending time with her two little babies and loves it. But at the same time, she feels this emptiness. There's something that she's still longing. And it's because it's the soul. The soul is longing something that no one else can fulfill. Because you can feed the body, all of these things, you can feed the image, all of these things. But I, the soul, am needing something. I need value, and that value is not visible. And so thank you, Pauline. And so Nina had this question, very lovely question. How can you lovingly work with ego? So this is actually a part of this capacity that every soul actually has. Again, it's our capacities as souls have become very weak. And our capacities of using the body are very good. And some are more refined than others. For example, in, let's say, dancing, in, let's say, painting or drawing, using technology. We're very good with these very physical facilities, which I, the soul, make this body operate to be able to use these capacities. But the capacities of me, the soul, that are used in day-to-day functioning still, like thinking. I'm always thinking about everything I think about seems to have to do with everything that is temporary. And this other capacity, which I mentioned about, is to remember, to recognize, to make decisions, to discern. Again, we're still using those things in very, very physical ways. So it's connected to your question, because there is a capacity of me to actually be an observer. And we probably hardly ever use it. But we actually, the more accurate term, it's not observer, is detached observer. And what that means is to be an observer of yourself first and foremost, in a stage that's very free, that's very objective. And what is it you're observing? Is you're observing your emotions, you're observing your thinking, you're observing the reactions that come up inside. And all of that stuff is actually related to ego. And so this capacity to observe, just like the capacity to recognize, the capacity to even make space internally for things that are going on, make room for that. This all actually requires power, what we call spiritual power. So there are two ways in which I can actually strengthen my spiritual power. One is I practice experiencing myself to be a soul. Practice recognizing that I'm a soul. You're strengthening that. And the second way you strengthen that is actually by having a connection and a relationship with the Supreme Soul. And that's a very gentle, non-violent, calm, soft experience. It's nothing intrusive, not a lot of these things that we thought about who this being is. And so those are the two things that are related to your question. How can you lovingly work with ego? It's that you don't actually do it directly. It's that you actually learn to build your experience as a soul. And so your capacity just to operate as a soul actually grows stronger. And I guess you can say we can add another third element, and I wouldn't want to make things complicated for others, is actually being able to use the way that you're fostering your awareness of who you are, the things that you learn about in these workshops, to actually use them through the day. And use them in terms of, okay, so in the day I'm stressed out at work. What if I were just to be open that I am a soul? What would that mean? What would really feed me? What would really actually, if I would be open to just considering that I am a soul and that I am eternal. Now it can go tricky. It can go sideways because this isn't meant to be an intellectual conversation. And just before we were having our workshop, there was just such a powerful feeling inside, taking a few minutes just to, again, be open to that I am a soul. Such a powerful feeling that I am immortal. And for a moment, it was like this fearlessness. And so this is what spiritual power is. It's actually it's nothing forceful whatsoever. So when it comes to your question, once again, how can you lovingly work with the ego? Is I want to practice soul consciousness, practice that experience and awareness of being a soul. And because Nina, I know you've already taken the course. And so increasingly, having that connection with the Supreme Soul. What happens is that you have a personality of actually being free. That's your true personality. We call it detachment, is that your true nature is that you don't have these strings attached to things around you. That is a natural capacity you have. To build that capacity, you need to experience yourself to be a soul. And while you're having that experience and connection with your spiritual parent, the Supreme Soul, what happens is it actually helps to melt away all these other false effects that I have had from really believing myself to be physical. All this stuff, all this habits from the past, reactions, addictions, and we all have addictions. It just might not seem very apparent. So I'm not sure. I hope that answers your question, Nina, but it definitely comes with time. You definitely need to proactively start to watch your thinking, watching your internal world. And it definitely gets better as you get stronger with these other two things, experiencing who I am and having connection with the Supreme Soul. So hopefully that helps answer your question. Ultimately, it is power we're all trying to develop and aiming for. But I would say that capacity to be able to be an observer of your internal world as you continue to make progress is a very, very important capacity to have, because there's lots of things that can come up inside. And there is, great, I'm glad it does answer your question. And the reason why your question is so important is because in the study, if you're open that you are a spiritual being, that this is not the only birth that you have taken, that you have other births. We all actually take human births. So you've had many other experiences, and those don't go away. Those stay inside you like a memory store. And if some of you can recall having, I remember, strange dreams as a young child of places I've been, things I'm afraid of, and where on earth does this come from? It comes from previous births. And so we also have previous births, habits that are not very helpful. And one of those habits that continues to get reinforced as we grow older in this birth is thoughts come up, feelings come up, and it's like, stop them, suppress them. Don't think about it, avoid them, do whatever you can to just suppress it. And this is not what spirituality is. It is not what Raja Yoga is about. And this is why spirituality has such a bad reputation. Right? It's because we don't have an understanding of who we are. And this is a beautiful study where it is very liberating when you are able to actually watch all this stuff going on. Sometimes it goes up, sometimes it goes down. Sometimes you have none of that stuff kind of comes up inside. But to be able to watch all that and still be able to access very understanding feelings about yourself, and actually even be able to be a mother to yourself in the sense of being your own cheerleader. And you learn this study so much about who you really are, what has happened to you. And that becomes very, very powerful, because the more you have this understanding that you can use that understanding and awareness through the day. We often hear that out there where it says that knowledge is power. We have lots of different types of knowledge out there, but this is now knowledge of you, not the image, not all of this other stuff, but the true sense of who you are. And so we're going to go into a reflection once again. And I welcome you once again. If you have questions, thoughts, you can type in the chat box at any time while we have our reflection. Just thinking about my own personal life. And thinking about this phrase, quality of life. What does that mean to me? It's a phrase that's used all over the place, especially in healthcare, to have a good quality of life. What would that look like for me? at the level of my feelings, my perception of myself, and how I am like with others in interactions. What does quality of life mean to me? Once again, in terms of my feelings, my perceptions with myself, how I interact with others, how I deal with changes in life. So again, this session is recorded and you're always welcome to come back to these questions. So Yasmin has mentioned here, quality of life means to me is having my cognitive intact, not a burden on anyone. That's a very powerful one. Yeah, it reminds me as well, and I hear this a lot, that they want to feel that they're not bothersome to others in terms of their own emotions, in terms of their own, just their own life. But this is powerful. Quality of life means to me is having my cognition intact, not a burden on anyone. And so thinking about, again, and furthering that for Yasmin, what does that mean for me when I am not a burden to anyone? And so thinking about, again, your own personal situations where you feel distress, where you feel that it's a challenge, where you feel that you wish you could be able to be different, have that dignity, have that, respond in the way you really wish that you'd be able to. Making this, again, this reflection very personal for yourself. So Pauline has shared so much purity and inner dignity. So this is Pauline's sharing in terms of what quality of life means for her. And so again, thank you, Pauline. I invite you to write your own thoughts down, because this is, again, your own personal journey. This workshop is only just bringing up reflective questions for you to feel what is important to you, to define what matters to you, which has always been there. And I can reflect for myself, as Pauline has mentioned here, these qualities of purity, inner dignity, reflecting for myself what those feelings would feel like, what those thoughts would feel like if I had that kind of quality of life. What would those feelings feel like? What would those thoughts be? Quality of thoughts. What would my interactions be like with others? Even, let's say, if others, were to cause sorrow, for example, say something that may not necessarily be appropriate, or that would in the past hurt my feelings. What would quality of life be where I could respond the way I hoped that would actually honor me? Being mindful that ego wants revenge and retaliation, a rebuttal. But many have always said that even though they might say something in reaction, they wish they didn't say that, because that's still not the real them. What if that experience of me was filled with such dignity, such fullness, The feeling that no one can actually ever really take advantage of me. No one can really hurt me. Things can be said. Others can maybe look at me a certain way, but my vision of myself stays constant. Constant in that feeling of fullness, true worth for the self, such grace. These feelings that I have are actually my true nature. And on this journey, along with experiencing my true nature, I also am learning to have a very elevated awareness of myself. So that in the face of doubts, in the face of storms in the mind and emotions, I'm actually learning as well to not just simply have positive affirmations of my true self, but actually a real understanding. There is a real me that I'm coming back to. And it's this quiet voice inside that might seem innocent compared to all the other excuses and the opinions and the thoughts of the past and experiences I've been through. But this voice inside my heart, there is a real me. And I want to get back to that. That feeling of that recognition, as tiny of a voice as it may be, the more I keep that recognition going, I can do it systematically once a day. I can do it again and again, but always at that feeling level from the heart. The more I do that, that recognition, that power of that recognition, that voice of recognition becomes stronger and more certain. And for the next few more minutes, just looking at this image, I am a being, however I am, whatever I am. I am a being who is seeking for that feeling of calm. I am looking for that experience of simplicity. Underneath the image that I see in the mirror, all those roles, all those expectations, there is a true me that at this moment, even if just for now, I don't have to be defined by any of those rules, not a mother, not some employee, not one who owns all these things. I am just a point of consciousness. This living point of consciousness seated right behind the eyes. I have always been this point of consciousness, but my attention has not been on me for a very long time. I have always existed. And so I am timeless. This body, we know one day it will go. But I, the soul, I will continue to exist. I have always been a soul. And at this moment, there is a stillness of timelessness. No roles, no image, no projects, no list of things to do, no past. I am off the stage of acting. I am just this living point of consciousness. And this stillness I am is like home. It is home to me. No expenditure of any sort that drains me. Nothing I need to prove to anything, to anyone. I just be in this experience. And I learn in this study to experience that I am this point of consciousness. And I can still exist in this body, in the physical. That I can still experience that I am looking through the eyes. Still experience I, the soul, still exist even while I'm in this body. I used to feel this as my reality. And now I am just learning to get back to that experience once again. Just holding this awareness. And there is only one soul who stays in that pure state of calm, that pure state, neutral, understanding, completely non-intrusive. Whose vibration, whose presence is so gentle, so grounding. A soul just like me, but a soul who doesn't forget who he is, who always stays real, never judges, never fluctuates, stays in that knowing of who I am. Remembers me even if I don't remember myself. Whose presence of peace is constant, like the ocean that seems to be unlimited. This is my spiritual parent, the soul whose calm, whose peace never stops, colored by my parents' company. I heal. That his calm is my calm. His lightness is my lightness. And all this experience is for me. I heal. All these qualities have always been mine. I just can't feel them. So being in the company of my spiritual parent, I start to remember this feeling. I experience it. But I start to accept that this is me. The more I feel it, the more I accept that I am a spiritual being, just like my spiritual parent. The impact of physicality has been for quite some time. The more I spend time in this experience of the real me, in the company of my spiritual parent. Yes, I have physical parents, but my spiritual parent is who truly defines me, the soul. I heal in this gentle stillness. Om Shanti. So as always, we end with a blessing. And usually if you're at the center, you would actually get a personal blessing for yourselves, a little card that's handmade that you take home with you. But we will send this blessing to you by email. And of course, for those on YouTube, this is for everyone. In the company of the ocean of peace, you are safe to heal and discover the greatness of who you are. So once again, in the company of the ocean of peace, you're safe to heal and discover the greatness of who you are. So these blessings, we call them blessings, but they're these beautiful thoughts that are meant to, again, something that you can sit with and experience. And my focus these days has really been taking one thought that we learn in regular Raja Yoga class and sit with the fragrance of that experience through the day. And I can see its impact on such a deep level. And so thank you for joining. I know we are running overtime right now, so souls need to leave. You're welcome to. If you have any final thoughts to share, questions, feel free to type in the chat box. Thank you, Pauline. Lovely to see you. We may end the YouTube just right now. Thank you for those who joined. No problem.